Nora once reported Lucas, but at that time it was mainly Chloe who was behind the scenes. In the end, Chloe resigned, the administrative management department was disbanded, and Nora was transferred to the marketing department. It is said that Nora has not been going smoothly in the marketing department. Lucas can imagine that Nora is so straightforward that she will point out immediately whenever there is something she doesn't like. She never beats around the bush. Such a personality is destined to offend people. The assistants in the president's office clapped their hands to welcome Nora when she came. Leo had mentioned before that there would be a new person, but Lucas didn't know it was Nora. At this time, he walked out of the glass door, stood outside, and greeted the new colleague with everyone. Their eyes met. Lucas smiled friendly at Nora, but Nora just nodded without any extra expression. Lucas sighed again. If it were someone else, they would probably take the initiative to show kindness to make up for the previous conflict between the two of them. James stood up and greeted Nora. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, Assistant Joseph, to the president's office. James has seniority and is always the first to act when there is something. Although he doesn't have an official position, everyone privately calls him the director or James. There was still no smile on Nora's face. She was neither enthusiastic nor proactive. She just said a few polite words and then sat down at her own workstation. Lucas thought for a while, walked to James, and said with a smile, James, I'd like to discuss something with you. James thought it was work assigned by the president, so he followed Lucas into the glass door. Lucas closed the door and started chatting with James. James, how did Nora get to the president's office? Lucas asked in a low voice. James was stunned for a moment, observed Lucas's expression, and suddenly understood. Everyone knows that Lucas had a conflict with someone in the administrative management department before, but they don't know exactly who it was. Now it seems that the one who offended him is this Nora. James cleared his throat and whispered, Didn't Mr. Leo tell you in advance? Lucas shook his head. He only knew that someone was coming, but he really didn't know who it was. James showed a sympathetic look and said, We all know. Lucas's eyes flickered and something flashed through them. James looked at him and comforted him. Maybe Mr. Leo kept it from you because he was afraid you'd be unhappy. He murmured softly, This matter really didn't take your feelings into consideration. Lucas quickly glanced at the door of the president's office and said, Mr. Leo has his own considerations. I fully agree with his approach. James nodded and patted Lucas on the shoulder, Of course. Don't worry. We'll find out who's capable. We won't show favoritism to the new person. The subtext was that if there was a conflict between Lucas and Nora, the assistants in the office would side with Lucas. Having received the assurance, Lucas gave James a grateful smile. Nora adapted to the new environment quickly. She could handle the basic work, but she didn't like to smile much and wasn't close to others. Lucas didn't need to manage the matters of the new person, but he had to complete the tasks assigned by the president. So Lucas initiated another business volume statistics in the name of Leo again, hoping that each assistant would submit the projects they were in charge of. Someone publicly complained, Why do we have to do this again? Lucas said with a smile, Half a year has passed. Let's do the statistics one more time. Last time, afraid that everyone would have objections, he communicated with each person privately one by one. But this time it wasn't so troublesome. He just collected the information openly. Generally, James was the one who did this kind of thing, but now it was given to Lucas. It's really good to be by the president's side for a long time. Someone made such a remark. Secretary Lucas is so young, yet he's highly regarded by Mr. Leo. Mr. Leo has even started to delegate power to him. His predecessor, Ivy, was the same. In a few years, he'll be able to be a middle-level manager independently. His promotion speed is much faster than ours. We can't envy him. James took all these words into account. Soon someone raised an objection, not necessarily. If Mr. Leo really regarded Secretary Lucas so highly, would he deliberately transfer Nora here to annoy him? It's obvious that he's trying to give Secretary Lucas a warning. Maybe Mr. Leo wants to cultivate Secretary Lucas, but he doesn't fully trust him yet. Not to mention anything else, sometimes Mr. Leo seems quite strict with Secretary Lucas. Secretary Lucas has taken a lot of Mr. Leo's anger for us. All right. Since that's the case, let's not talk about others behind their backs. Of course, these discussions are not excessive. Even if they reach the ears of the parties involved, there won't be any problems. But some people take note of them in their hearts. The documents submitted by the company to the president's office generally have to go through Lucas. Nora sends the electronic version of the form to Lucas on the computer and then walks to his desk with the paper version. Lucas is just looking at the electronic version on the computer. Without even looking up, he says to Nora, "No need. Just send it back. Mr. Leo won't read it." Nora is stunned for a moment and says, "But didn't you need it urgently?" Only then does Lucas look up, glance at Nora, and say, "Even if it's urgent, we can't deviate from the requirements. I've already notified every one of the requirements in advance. Obviously, this document is not in the proper format." Nora says, "Only the format of one data entry hasn't been adjusted properly. I've told the departments below in advance. They said they've always done it this way and Mr. Leo won't have any issues with it." Lucas takes a deep breath and says, "That's because it wasn't emphasized before. This time, I specifically marked this point in the notice, hoping that everyone would pay attention. Take it back and redo it." Nora looks at the signatures and seals on the document. The whole process will have to start all over again. Lucas looks at her, smiles, and says, "You can voice your opinions." Nora opens her mouth but finally says nothing. She picks up the document and walks back to her seat, letting out a long sigh. At this time, James comes over and comforts her. This is just how the work in the president's office is. There's no room for the slightest mistake. Nora nods. James adds, "But it's not completely inflexible." He seemingly asks casually, "Did Secretary Lucas send it back to you directly?" Nora continues to nod. James sighs, "It's really a waste of time to get it signed and stamped again." Nora says with a straight face, "It's all my fault. I should bear the responsibility." Presumably, the departments below did it deliberately, thinking that as a new employee, she was easy to deceive, which is why they said such things. James flips through the documents on Nora's desk and says, "Strange. Mr. Leo never used to care about such minor issues. Could it be that Secretary Lucas made this decision on his own this time?" Hearing this, Nora looked at James. James smiled at her and said helplessly, "It's like this here. All materials and documents have to go through Secretary Lucas. Secretary Lucas often makes decisions on behalf of Mr. Leo. He was a bit distressed. Sometimes it's even more difficult to get through Secretary Lucas than Mr. Leo. You should get used to this situation as soon as possible." Nora frowned after hearing this. After the assistants in the president's office summarized their work performance for the first half of the year, they all sent it to Lucas. Since Nora had just joined, she naturally had no workload, so she didn't send this email. As a result, Lucas went directly to her workstation and asked, "Assistant Joseph, why didn't you hand in your summary to me?" Nora said calmly, "I just transferred here. There's no work to summarize." Lucas said with a smile, "But you've been working for the first half of this year. Even if it was in another department, there must be some achievements. You should also summarize them and hand them in to me." This was a bit unreasonable. Nora wanted to say something but still kept silent and frowned as she agreed. A few days later, after James went to the president's office to handle some matters, he looked a bit angry when he came out. Other assistants asked him what was wrong. He said irritably, "Didn't Secretary Lucas ask us to summarize our work before? I just mentioned it in front of Mr. Leo." Do you know what Mr. Leo said? He said he never asked Secretary Lucas to do this. Others were surprised. So it was Secretary Lucas who made the decision on his own to ask us to hand in the summaries? James nodded. Now several assistants had objections. What right does Secretary Lucas have to make such demands on us? Everyone is very busy at the middle of the year and we still have to spare energy to deal with him. This time it's really a bit too much. We are all at the same level. He has no reason to order us around. What about Mr. Leo? What did Mr. Leo say after he found out? James sighed helplessly. Mr. Leo said since we've already done it, it's not a bad thing. He said he would ask Secretary Lucas to hand in the reports to him later and he would take a look. It was good that the reports they had worked so hard on could be seen by the president. At least their efforts weren't in vain and they felt a bit better. But when they thought that Mr. Leo was being partial to Secretary Lucas by saying so, the assistants' moods became unpleasant again. James looked at Nora and said, "The most pitiful one is you. You're just a newbie. It's exactly the time when you're busy adapting to your job, but you still have to deal with such requests." Nora didn't say a word. The looks of the others towards Nora instantly changed, full of sympathy and a bit of schadenfreude. Everyone knew that Nora and Lucas had had a feud before. Of course, Lucas would seize the opportunity to make things difficult for her. A few more days passed. Nora and Lucas often clashed. There were always problems here and there. Nora was frequently aggrieved. The smile on her face became less and less, and she always looked sullen as if others owed her money. The others in the president's office saw this scene and were all waiting for an opportunity to explode. That day, Lucas went to the HR department and asked Ivy to recommend some capable administrative staff. This made everyone in the president's office feel insecure. There's only so much space in the president's office. Since someone is going to come in, someone must leave. No wonder they were asked to submit their business summaries before. But is it Lucas's turn to take care of this matter? Everyone began to worry. Lucas is the person closest to the president. Will he whisper in the president's ear and take the opportunity to kick out those who are at odds with him? As the senior in the president's office, the other assistants were counting on James to find out the situation. James thought for a while and privately went to find Lucas. Lucas told him it's just a routine promotion of new employees. Don't think too much. James asked again, did Mr. Leo leave this matter entirely to you to handle? Lucas laughed and said, how is that possible? I don't have such power. Personnel transfers are arranged by Mr. Leo or Assistant Sue. I'm only responsible for passing on the message. James felt relieved, but still felt a bit uncomfortable. There's too much room for manipulation in the process of passing on the message. What if Lucas takes a dislike to someone? Can't he just squeeze that person out? He thought for a while and said, going to the HR department so ostentatiously like this makes people feel panicked, which is not conducive to the work. Lucas nodded and said apologetically, indeed, James is right to remind me. I'll be more careful next time. James quickly said, I'm not trying to direct you. I'm just giving a suggestion. Lucas smiled and said, of course I know. James has rich experience. I still have a lot to learn from you. After the two of them talked for a few words, James returned to his own seat. Privately, someone asked James about the situation. James sighed deeply, looking full of distress. Sure enough, Secretary Lucas was involved in the personnel transfer. Passing on messages is also a form of involvement. The others were greatly surprised after hearing this. They thought Lucas had the power to decide on personnel matters and secretly thought in their hearts that this was going too far. Immediately, Lucas' image in everyone's hearts turned into that of a sycophant beside the emperor. The assistants each calculated in their hearts and no one said a word. The bigger the matter, the fewer the words. They used to say a few words before, but now no one dared to discuss it. James looked at the few people with their own thoughts and thought angrily in his heart that they were of no use at the critical moment. He looked at Nora. Sure enough, he still had to count on the new person who dared to say anything. So he turned to Nora and said to her earnestly, Assistant Joseph, you're new here, but you can't slack off on your work. Secretary Lucas said that when evaluating whether to keep someone or not, it doesn't depend on the length of service, but only on the work results. If someone makes too many mistakes, no one will be retained. Recently, the only new person who made mistakes was Nora. Although most of the mistakes were insignificant and sometimes Lucas deliberately made things difficult for her. Nora's face paled and then anger flashed in her eyes. She said, I didn't expect the working atmosphere in the president's office to be like this. It's so disappointing. The others were all stunned at the same time. Assistant Joseph really dared to speak. Everyone comforted Nora a few words and then dispersed to do their own things. As for what they were thinking in their hearts, it was unknown. Nora couldn't sit still. She slapped the table, which startled the others, then stood up with a bang and said, this can't go on. The president's office can't be decided by one person alone. After saying this, she left her seat and walked towards the president. The others watched her enter the glass door and walk up to Lucas. The two of them said something. Nora seemed extremely emotional, raising her eyebrows and looking furious. Lucas seemed to be explaining, with a smile on his face all the time. The two of them didn't seem to see eye to eye, and Nora directly knocked on the president's door. Those who were watching from afar were all surprised in their hearts. Nora is so tough. Then Nora entered the president's office while Lucas stayed outside. About half an hour later, Nora came out, glaring at Lucas fiercely, and then returned to her seat. Someone secretly asked her, Assistant Joseph, what did you go to see Mr. Leo for? Nora sat up straight with only calmness on her face and said, I couldn't stand it, so I gave some suggestions. That person gave her a thumbs up. Awesome. Giving suggestions is just like reporting. Nora has done this kind of thing before. James finally felt better seeing how things developed. On this day, Leo and Lucas stayed very late. When the others got off work, they thought knowingly that the president was going to talk to Secretary Lucas, so they left in a hurry so as not to be in the way. After everyone in the office had left, Lucas knocked on Leo's office door. Leo asked him to come in. The first thing he said when he saw him was, "Let's have a meal together." Lucas didn't expect the president to say this to him. His expression was complicated. Leo looked at him and said, "What, are you so immersed in the office game that you've forgotten you have a side job?" Lucas said calmly, "Isn't it because the president is having so much fun being the director and has arranged so many roles for me?" Leo said, "Aren't you enjoying it too? Why are you complaining?" Lucas said generously, "Don't you always say that I'm in a bad mood? Am I not even allowed to complain when I'm treated like a tool?" Leo looked at him and said, "You're my secretary. It's only natural for you to be my tool." Lucas had no way to refute and could only say, "Not only do I have to be a tool, but I also have to constantly watch out for the pitfalls under my feet." He said, "You said you'd let me make the final personnel decisions. You were just pulling my leg, weren't you? You've already made up your mind about who should stay and who should go." Leo remained silent. Lucas continued, "It's just that because the founding members have made contributions and endured hardships, it's inconvenient for you to take action, so you use me to get rid of them." Leo said, "Understanding my intentions is also one of the tests for you. You've become much smarter. It's not been in vain for you to work by my side for a year." Lucas thought to himself, what a cunning and heartless capitalist. He thought for a while and asked, "Why do we need to make personnel changes?" Although there had been signs of this since half a year ago, Lucas still couldn't figure out the president's intention. Leo changed the subject and said, "It's off work time. Let's not talk about those things. Do you want to have dinner with me or not?" Lucas knew that once Leo didn't want to talk about something, he would never tell others. So he said, "Of course. It would be a waste not to." He took a few deep breaths and then exhaled. He raised his hand and placed it on his shoulder, making circular motions while supporting his shoulder. Leo looked at him curiously and asked, "What are you doing?" Lucas said, "I'm switching to my side job mode. I'm doing a warm-up, transforming into a handsome man." The two of them went downstairs together. In the elevator, Lucas asked Leo, "Mr. Leo, what's the frequency of doing our side jobs?" Leo glanced sideways and said, "What do you mean?" Lucas cleared his throat and said, "Do we also have to act in private?" Leo said, "Of course. Do you think it's so easy to get double pay?" "But there's no one watching us when we act," Lucas expressed his doubts. "There are no spies and no peeping cameras. I thought we only needed to act when we met the chairman and his wife." Leo snorted, "If you don't practice on a regular basis, you'll seem unnatural when it really matters. For example, last time your acting was either lousy or over the top. What the president said seemed reasonable, but there was something off about it." They reached the garage floor. Lucas didn't speak immediately. He lowered his head, lost in thought, and prepared to step out of the elevator. Leo stepped forward ahead of him, turned around, and blocked his way. Lucas looked up in surprise, took an involuntary step back, and looked at the president, asking, "Mr. Leo, what's up?" Leo lowered his head slightly and looked at Lucas with downcast eyes. The elevator doors closed behind him. He asked, "Do you really not want to have dinner with me?" Trapped between Leo and the elevator wall, Lucas whispered, "No, I don't." Seeing Lucas being so cautious, Leo felt an inexplicable irritation well up inside him. "Aren't you in the side job mode? Why are you still so?" He paused for a moment and said, "Why are you still so timid? That's not how a couple should act." He knew that in Lucas' mind, he was a heartless and stingy capitalist at work. But now that they were getting along privately, was it really necessary for Lucas to look so pitiful? It was the same when they went to his place last time. The junior secretary was like a frightened squirrel from start to finish. He even brought a lunchbox. Who would bring their own lunchbox when visiting someone else's home? That's like slapping the host in the face. Looking at Lucas like this, Leo wanted to question him, "Do you think I'll eat you up?" But when he saw Lucas' dark, moist eyes, Leo couldn't say a word. He even involuntarily reflected on whether he had been too harsh on him. The car of the president's exclusive elevator was more spacious than ordinary elevators. But with Leo standing inside, his tall figure blocking the exit, he seemed to fill the entire space, exuding a strong sense of oppression. Lucas blinked, not knowing what he had done to upset the president this time. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but no sound came out. Leo commanded, "Speak." Summoning up his courage, Lucas said loudly, "It's exactly because I'm in this mode that I'm like this. If it were work time, I wouldn't be afraid of you at all." Leo squinted his eyes and repeated Lucas' words, "Not afraid of me when working?" Lucas thought it was so hard to please. It was not okay to be afraid, and it was also not okay not to be afraid. He swallowed hard, straightened up, and said, "Because I've been with you for a year and got used to your working style, so I'm not afraid anymore." Leo was very caustic with his words and had a bad temper, but he had his bottom line in work. As long as you met his requirements, he was always very generous to his subordinates. Moreover, Lucas found that as long as you had valid reasons, Leo wouldn't do much to you. He would just scold you a couple of times at most. Correspondingly, if you didn't do as he said and made mistakes, then you were doomed. Generally speaking, the president was quite fair in rewarding the good and punishing the bad. Lucas had figured out his superior's principles and attitudes in the workplace, so he was naturally not very afraid. Sometimes he could even crack a joke with the president and retort a few words. But it's different outside of work. Lucas said, "I don't know how to get along with you privately." Leo said, "Weren't you quite bold before?" Lucas asked in confusion, "When was before?" Leo's eyes flickered and his voice was a bit muffled. "The time when you touched my hand. It was in public and during a meeting, and you just reached out and touched it directly." Lucas blushed and said, "That was acting." Leo lifted his chin with disdain in his eyes. "You can act now too." Lucas got a bit anxious. He took a breath, thought for a moment, and said, "You can't act all the time. The current situation is that we need to stay together to accumulate time, and we can't treat you with a work-related attitude. So what should I do?" Leo said, "Since we're acting as a couple, of course we should act in the way a couple does." Lucas stared wide-eyed. The president was actually saying this so brazenly. It was so easy sounding. He clearly had never been in a relationship. Lucas said, "It's impossible. Do you know what the way of a couple is?" As he was speaking, sweat started to break out on the tip of his nose. "If I were really in a relationship, I'd be a bit capricious." Lucas blurted out, "It's impossible to act like that towards you." Leo frowned and asked, "Act coquettishly?" Since Lucas had already spoken, he was in a difficult situation and explained, "It means throwing small tantrums and liking to act coquettishly." Only then was Leo stunned. He had seen the junior secretary's serious working appearance and his smart and mischievous side, but he had no idea what acting coquettishly was. Leo tried to imagine but couldn't. But he was sure of one thing, he wasn't very happy. Leo asked, "Do you act like that when you're in a relationship?" Lucas didn't understand how the topic had developed to this point. He was so ashamed that he wished he could dig a hole and hide in it. He must have been out of his mind to tell the president all this. Lucas' face was bright red. Just thinking about what he had said about being prone to tantrums and acting coquettishly made him want to bite off his own tongue. Who would have thought that Leo wouldn't let him off and continued to ask, "Were you also a little coquette in front of your ex-boyfriend?" Lucas wanted to die. He took another step back. His body touched the elevator wall. He bit his lips and refused to say a word. Seeing the lips that should have been pink-bitten pale, Leo inexplicably felt a surge of irritability. Just thinking about Lucas acting coquettishly and throwing tantrums at that scumbag made Leo want to drag that guy out and sink him to the bottom of the lake. Leo said with a straight face, "Don't act so capriciously." So, the president would never accept the so-called couple mode. They could only be superior and subordinate. Lucas patted his cheeks, took a few deep breaths and said, "I understand. Next time I encounter this kind of situation, I'll adjust myself." After thinking it over, he thought he could try to treat the president as a friend. Maybe it would ease their relationship and prevent it from being as awkward as when he went to the president's house. Leo was not very satisfied when he heard Lucas say something compromising, but he couldn't tell what was bothering him. He could only look at Lucas with a gloomy face. Lucas raised his eyes and looked at Leo. His gaze was gentle, the corners of his mouth lifted into a faint smile, and his cheeks were as rosy as a flower. He said in a soft voice, "Shall we still have something to eat? I'm a bit hungry." Leo felt his throat tighten. He felt that the air in the elevator had become thin and the temperature was a bit high. Is this what is called acting coquettishly? Leo sort of understood. He reached out and tugged at his tie, then turned around, pressed the elevator door open, stepped aside, motioned for Lucas to go first, and at the same time asked, "What would you like to eat?" Lucas was a bit flustered when he saw the president being so gentlemanly. But then he remembered what Leo had said just now, so he quickly walked out of the elevator and said, "Anything is okay." Leo followed him out and walked side by side with him, saying, "It's the most difficult when anything is okay." Lucas smiled and said, "Actually, I've been thinking about the meal I had at your place last time." Leo raised his eyebrows and looked at him sideways. Lucas felt embarrassed. "Well, I'm tired of eating out. I still prefer home-cooked food." He looked at the president eagerly. "Mr. Leo, you should give the chef a raise." Leo murmured an and said, "I'll let you have it again next time." Lucas wondered in his heart, would he still go to the president's place? Only then did he realize that just now when he praised the food at the president's place, it seemed a bit like hinting to Leo to invite him. Lucas lowered his head remorsefully. Then he thought the president wouldn't be so petty and secretly began to look forward to it. Work would continue the next day. Lucas sat at his own desk dealing with his own affairs. James walked over. There was a look of curiosity on his face. He carefully asked Lucas, "Secretary Lucas, were you okay yesterday?" Lucas sighed, looked up from the computer, and smiled at James. "I'm fine, James." He seemed reluctant to say more, but James still wanted to ask in detail what exactly happened. Assistant Joseph suddenly slapped the table and rushed towards you yesterday. Didn't you have a conflict? Anyone with eyes could see the argument between Nora and Lucas. How could this be called no conflict? Lucas looked embarrassed and told James, "Assistant Joseph is a rather straightforward person and may have a rather hot temper. I didn't take it to heart." He volunteered. Later, Assistant Joseph went to see Mr. Leo, and Mr. Leo also agreed with her opinion. Lucas looked serious and there was no sign of anger at all. He said to James, "We in the president's office need people who dare to tell the truth." Lucas spoke sincerely. He seemed not to mind Nora's doubts about him, looking very magnanimous. The more he was like this, the more James thought he was fake. What does "we in the president's office" mean? Lucas has only been here for a year. Who gave him the qualification to represent the entire president's office? It's really a big joke. James smiled at Lucas and asked, "What about Mr. Leo yesterday? What did Mr. Leo say to you?" Lucas' expression faded. James brought up the sensitive topic. "Mr. Leo didn't criticize you, did he?" He sighed exaggeratedly. "Mr. Leo doesn't need to blame you for a newcomer. Every word he said was meaningful. Newcomers will always become old-timers. Relying too much on newcomers will disappoint the old-timers." Lucas frowned and said, "Newcomers and old-timers don't have to be in opposition." James just smiled, reached out and patted Lucas on the shoulder, then turned and left. Lucas looked at his back and frowned. James' attitude towards him was obviously different from before. He began to show hostility, probably because James thought the president had criticized him yesterday. Lucas shook his head. He originally wanted to convince James, but James simply wouldn't listen to him. James didn't immediately return to his own seat but went to find Nora. He often played the role of a peacemaker in the office, soothing both sides and offending no one. He knew that some people said he was slippery, but he didn't take it to heart. He thought that after he came to the president's office, the atmosphere had become much more harmonious. Someone always has to step forward and take the lead, and someone always has to play the role of peacemaker. He is the most suitable candidate. Others only need to hide behind him and enjoy the convenience. What reason do they have not to support him? James stopped in front of Nora's desk. Nora looked brand new today. It seemed that she was in a very good mood because she had vented her anger yesterday. When she saw James coming, she smiled at him and said, "Good morning, James." James nodded and asked her, "Are you okay too?" Nora said strangely, "What could be wrong with me?" James said with a somewhat regretful tone, "After all, you had a conflict with Secretary Lucas yesterday." Nora laughed and said, "But Mr. Leo is very fair. He said I did the right thing, and I immediately forgot the unpleasantness." James nodded and praised, "Indeed, Mr. Leo likes straightforward people." It seems that Nora's complaint was effective. Mr. Leo is indeed on guard against Secretary Lucas. James suppressed his inner jealousy. Lucas is so young but wants to climb above them old-timers. His ambition is too big. He steadied his mind and looked at Nora. It's better to let the two newbies continue to fight and consume each other. Everyone thought that Nora went to complain to Leo that day, and then Leo scolded Lucas. Lucas has been in low spirits these days. He keeps his head down and does his own thing without communicating with others. At this time, Leo called a meeting of everyone in the president's office. He clearly stated at the meeting that there will be a series of changes in the future and hoped that everyone could cooperate. Everyone's heart was stirred up. The president definitely won't explicitly state the personnel changes. He hopes to promote this matter in a gentle way. Leo said, "How to make the whole president's office better is still in the exploratory stage. I will fully consider everyone's opinions. If you have any ideas, you can come to me directly." After this meeting, there were soon changes within the office. Someone voluntarily proposed to go to the front line business department. This incident caused a stir in the office. Everyone wasn't sure if this person was really being proactive or being nudged out. Vaguely, they thought it wasn't a bad idea. Having already gained experience in the president's office, spending a few more years honing themselves in the business department might lead to faster promotions. These things didn't have much to do with Nora. She had been transferred in from outside and had just managed to establish herself in the president's office. she definitely wouldn't be thinking about any changes. But James advised her behind her back, you can try for the position of Secretary Lucas. Even Nora couldn't help but widen her eyes in surprise. James, this isn't right, is it? One couldn't just go and snatch someone else's position. James sighed. As a senior, I truly have your future in mind. That's why I'm taking the risk of offending Secretary Lucas to make things clear to you. He said earnestly, Mr. Leo likes to use new people. Supervisor Shaw was doing a great job before, but suddenly Secretary Lucas was transferred up from below. Secretary Lucas is so young and hardly knows anything. And Mr. Leo is so picky. There were several conflicts at that time. Speaking of those conflicts, Nora was involved in one of them. Think about it. Even though this was the case, why did Mr. Leo insist on using Secretary Lucas? It's because Mr. Leo likes new people who are proactive and motivated. James said to Nora, Mr. Leo has the same expectations for you. He hopes you can bring a new atmosphere to the office. He looked at Nora encouragingly. You can give it a try. It's okay. Mr. Leo said he respects personal wishes. Your relationship with Secretary Lucas is already like this. Don't be afraid of offending him. Nora frowned and nodded. It was hard to tell if she had taken it to heart. The next day, James knew that Nora had taken it to heart. Leo summoned both Lucas and Nora at the same time. The three of them stayed in the president's office for over half an hour before the two young people came out. Nora looked elated while Lucas was in a low mood. The contrast was clearly visible. James pursed his lips. Not only did he persuade Nora, but he also spread the word among the senior employees, saying that Mr. Leo now liked to use new people and no longer cared about them, the old-timers. He told everyone to unite so as not to be squeezed out by the young people. Those people also went to see Leo one by one. James was very satisfied with this situation. It was only in the end that he stepped in himself and wrote an email to Leo. The email detailed the personalities and work styles of everyone in the president's office. According to their characteristics, he arranged suitable positions for each person and mapped out their development paths. It was well-reasoned and very detailed. No one knew the characteristics of the staff in the president's office better than him. Isn't this better than Lucas' so-called business summary report? If the president had asked for his opinion before, there would have been no need to conduct those investigations. Clearly, a lot of time and manpower could have been saved. In this email from James, he didn't write about his own needs at all. With all his painstaking efforts, the president must have taken notice and will arrange his work reasonably. After all, there's no one in the president's office who is more familiar with the overall situation than him. James proudly clicked the send button of the email. Leo looked at the email on the computer and turned to ask Lucas, what's your opinion? Lucas said cautiously, James is a very meticulous and considerate person. Leo glanced at him and said, tell the truth. Lucas paused for a moment and chose his words carefully. James is good in every aspect, but he has too many petty thoughts which causes serious internal friction and hinders the development of himself and those around him. Leo tapped his fingers on the desktop. Lucas understood that Leo still took into account the hard work of the old employees. He wouldn't take action against James unless it was absolutely necessary. So he went around in circles and staged this play, hoping that James would perform well. As long as James showed any redeeming qualities, Leo would have let him stay in the president's office. It's a pity that a person's character can't be changed overnight. Every step James took hit Leo's sore spots. Leo said to Lucas, call James in. I'll talk to him. Lucas was surprised. Don't you need me to act as a go-between anymore? Leo said, you're not needed. I'll handle it myself. It's also giving James one last bit of face. James never expected that the email he was so proud of would become his death knell. When he came out of the president's office, he was still in a daze. Mr. Leo asked him to be the deputy supervisor in another department. On the surface, it was a promotion, but in fact, it was to keep him away from the core of the company. He had worked in the president's office for so many years, and now he was about to leave. Lucas caught up and called out to James. James finally lost his outward gentleness, turned his head and scolded fiercely, you're happy now, aren't you? After squeezing me out, do you think you can dominate the president's office? Lucas said calmly, I've never thought about dominating. James has many characteristics common to veteran professionals in the workplace, such as thinking he's always right and refusing to listen to others' advice, and thinking that others are out to get him with just one word. But Lucas still wanted to tell him, Mr. Leo didn't do this because he doubts your ability. Sure enough, James didn't want to listen at all. Stop showing off in front of me. Lucas said calmly, you can't keep up with Mr. Leo's pace. James was stunned for a moment and a look of annoyance appeared on his face. Shut up. Lucas continued, James, you should understand better than me. As subordinates, understanding the boss's intentions and following his pace is the basic principle in the workplace. Mr. Leo needs people who are enterprising, not deadweights who hold him back and cause internal strife. James' face turned ashen. Moreover, Lucas made it clear you shouldn't make plans for Mr. Leo. Leo asked Lucas to make personnel decisions, but Lucas didn't dare to really take action. He only dared to make roundabout probes. Why did James think that Leo would be happy if he arranged everyone in the president's office for Leo? The boss and the subordinate view problems from different perspectives. Leo didn't seek the subordinate's opinion, which means he has his own ideas. He doesn't need James to tell him what to do. James is an old hand after all. He figured it out right away and his face immediately turned pale. He was blinded by jealousy and uneasiness. Afraid that Lucas would take his position, he was eager to show himself and lost his composure. James became completely dejected, pursed his lips and said nothing. Just then, Nora walked up and said to Lucas, Secretary Lucas, I've completed the task you asked me to do last time. Nora looked relaxed and spoke in a brisk tone. There was no sign of any past conflict with Lucas. Instead, she seemed very friendly. James stared at her with wide eyes. James glared at Lucas and Nora. When did you two get so close? Nora turned her head with a smile and greeted James. James. Then she looked at Lucas and said, Mr. Leo talked to me and asked me to get along well with Secretary Lucas. Naturally, I have to listen to Mr. Leo. Even if James was stupid, he understood what was going on. He was so angry that he couldn't say a word. But at this moment, no matter what he said or did, it would be of no avail. He only blamed himself for being too greedy and careless. He knew that all the president's actions were not impromptu. It seemed that the president had set his sights on him for a long time. James turned around and left, ignoring the two young people anymore. After James left, Nora put away the smile on her face and became expressionless again. She said to Lucas, This should be okay, right? It's none of my business from now on. Lucas looked at her with a complicated expression. I guess so. The personnel changes will come down soon. Nora nodded and indifferently prepared to return to her workstation. Lucas called her to stop. Assistant Joseph, thank you very much this time. Nora turned around, looking cold. There was no trace of the enthusiasm she had shown in front of James just now. She said, You're welcome. Anyway, I'm often used as a tool. I'm already used to it. Nora is straightforward. She says what she thinks. Such a person is easy to be taken advantage of. She was transferred from the administrative department to the marketing department. Along the way, she experienced a lot of things and gradually had a clear understanding of herself. Now that she's in the president's office, the president still uses her as a pawn, but Nora doesn't really care. At least this time, she's a positive tool. Moreover, she has begun to benefit from her own personality. Every department needs someone who dares to speak directly and tell the truth. Undoubtedly, she is the best candidate. Nora looked at Lucas and said, Although we're now working under the same boss, there are still many times when I can't stand you. She really is a straightforward girl. She can say anything directly. After Nora finished speaking, she turned around, leaving a proud back for Lucas, and walked away generously. After a period of turmoil, the president's office finally got rid of the people who caused internal strife, slacked off their duties, and accepted bribes from other departments. The whole office became extremely clean. People got things done directly without any redundancy. Henry didn't discuss this matter with Leo until everything had settled down. Mr. Leo, I have to say you're really efficient. You said you'd rectify the office, and you achieved your goal right away. Leo looked at Henry with a cold expression. This matter should have been handed over to you. Not only did you not show up all the time, but you also made me do it myself. Henry pretended to smile simply and honestly. I'm not as as you. I'm most afraid of intrigue. Leo gave him a sidelong glance and listened to his nonsense. Isn't what you do also intrigue? Henry said, It's different. I'm fighting with the shareholders and investors. Besides, there's still Secretary Lucas in the office. He's extremely loyal to you and will do whatever you tell him. There's no need for me. Leo snorted. After Henry finished joking, he said seriously, Things are going smoothly on my side. So, Mr. Leo, when are you going to take action? Since the incident in the administrative department before, Leo had been secretly making arrangements. When the speed project was set up halfway, Leo was even less likely to let it go. Leo said to Henry, The timing isn't right yet. Henry rubbed his hands. I can hardly hold back anymore. When do you think it's okay? Just give the order, and I'll charge into the battle for you right away. Leo nodded. The two talked about some serious matters. Just as Henry was about to leave the office, he was called back by Leo. Leo was sitting in his office chair with his hands resting on the desk, looking deep in thought. Henry asked curiously, What's up, Mr. Leo? Is there anything else? Leo thought for a while and asked, Henry, I have a friend. In this day and age, the trick of inventing a friend is no longer in fashion. Henry mercilessly exposed the president. Just say what you want directly. Don't beat around the bush. Leo's mouth drooped, and he looked at Henry unhappily. After a long time, he reluctantly said, Well, I have a junior. Stop. Why is it a junior again? Henry interrupted Leo. What on earth is it? I'm really curious. Leo got angry. I'm talking. Don't interrupt me. Only then did Henry shut up. Leo took a deep breath. He thought it would be more appropriate to introduce Lucas as his junior when talking to outsiders. So he continued, I have a junior. Every time we get along, the atmosphere is very stiff. But for some reasons, I want to get on well with him. What should I do? Henry was stunned. He didn't expect it to be such a question. A junior? I haven't heard that there is an extra junior in the Chin family. He asked, Who is it? Do I know him? Leo said firmly, You don't know him. Stop talking nonsense. You're the most slippery and can get along well with anyone. Quickly tell me what to do. Henry stroked his chin and asked, How old is he? I can't handle primary school students. Leo said vaguely, In his teens. Henry asked again, Boy or girl? Leo glared at him and said, Why do you ask so many questions? Henry said, Let's assume it's a boy. Is he both annoyed by you and afraid of you? I don't know if he's annoyed, but he's a bit afraid. Just thinking about how Lucas behaved at his home made Leo feel uncomfortable. Could it be that besides being afraid, Lucas was also a bit annoyed by him? Leo frowned. Henry rarely saw the president looking so confused. He said, You may not realize it yourself, but actually you always speak in a commanding tone. In the eyes of a rebellious teenager in his teens, this tone is simply a thunderbolt. He analyzed it for Leo. If you want to get on well with this kind of young man, don't educate him or order him around. Go along with his wishes and don't be fierce to him. Leo frowned even deeper. Henry said, You bosses all have a bit of an overbearing temper. It's okay to be like this with your subordinates, but not with your relatives. Don't you know it's easy to annoy people? Once Henry started talking, he got carried away. He strongly criticized Leo's usual tone and expression, and gradually began to include his own grievances. We subordinates have had to watch your face a lot. Leo looked at him coldly and said, Shut up. Look. This is exactly the look. You must be just as fierce with that kid. No wonder the kid ignores you. Henry said, patting his thigh. Leo waved his hand irritably and said, Get out and let me be alone. Henry knew that if he continued, Leo would fly into a rage. So he decided to stop while he was ahead. Then I'll leave first. I wish you could handle the kid soon. Leo said angrily, Hurry up and go. Only I can call him a kid. Henry quickly slipped away. Leo sat in his office chair, turned the chair around, and stared out of the window at the bustling scenery, lost in thought. Lucas was called to Leo's house again. It makes sense. After all, for a fake couple, it's impossible to only visit once. So Lucas bought another gift, took a bath and burned incense, made full preparations, and then went to Leo's house. Since the president said last time that he usually just works out and reads the news, Lucas was afraid that they would sit in silence again. So he specifically went to relevant forums to study the international economic situation, found several in-depth analyses, and memorized them. They work in a company and usually pay attention to these things. But Lucas had never analyzed an article word by word like this before. He almost memorized the whole article, planning to discuss it with Leo later. Lucas came to number 3 Yunting Mansion. Just like last time, Leo let him directly enter the yard and waited for him at the door. "Good afternoon, Mr. Leo," Lucas said with a smile. Since Leo called him over mainly for dinner, Lucas didn't arrive until the afternoon. Leo took the things from his hand and said, "Don't buy things anymore." Lucas responded but didn't really take it seriously. No one would really stop buying things just because others said so. Usually it's just a polite gesture. Who would have thought that Leo said, "What I mean is, since you'll be coming often anyway, it's too much trouble to buy things every time." Lucas looked at Leo and blinked. Sure enough, once there is a first time, there will be a second time, and after the second time, there will be countless more. Come often if you like. Lucas thought so, but his face felt a little warm. Lucas followed Leo into the living room. The last time he came, he only moved around in the living room, dining room, and audiovisual room. He didn't dare to set foot in other rooms. This time, Leo actually said, "I'll show you around the house." Lucas showed an expression of being flattered. Whenever Leo saw his timid look, he felt annoyed. He always wondered if he had been too strict with Lucas. Every time he was a little gentler, Lucas would be so nervous. Leo took a deep breath and said, "Follow me." The house in Yunting Mansion has a total of 4 floors. The first and second floors are one unit, and the third and fourth floors are another unit. Leo bought the whole building and renovated it. The top floor was changed into a glass-structured one. When visiting the third floor, Lucas just took a look at a guest room and didn't want to go deeper. He knew that further inside was the master bedroom, where Leo rested. He was concerned about Leo's cleanliness and was afraid that if he went in, it would displease the president. Leo understood his thoughts at a glance and said, "It's okay to take a look." Lucas waved his hands repeatedly and said, "Forget it, Mr. Leo. Let's go to the 4th floor. I want to see the sunroom." Leo gave him a deep look and didn't force him. It has to be said that the president's house is really luxurious and comfortable, which shows that Leo is a person who attaches great importance to the quality of life and is willing to maintain his private space. Of course, Lucas said a lot of nice things to praise Leo's home. After they walked around for a while, they finally returned to the audio-visual room. Lucas didn't understand why they came here again, but it didn't matter. Anyway, it was just a time. If they didn't watch a movie, he could also discuss the international situation with the president. Leo said, "You said last time that you mainly play online games in your spare time." He said this in a serious tone, something that Lucas couldn't believe. "I've bought a set of gaming equipment. Do you want to try it?" Lucas was stunned. Is he dreaming? The president actually bought a game console, and it was even for him. When Lucas saw the game console, he still felt like he wasn't awake. He stared blankly at the controller and the VR all in one machine in front of him, lost in a daze. Leo doesn't usually play games. He just thought the console was suitable for family interaction, so he got a set. Seeing Lucas still in a daze, he asked, "Don't you like it?" Lucas quickly said, "I like it. This equipment is more luxurious than many console game experience centers." Hearing him say so, Leo's expression softened a bit and he said, "I was afraid you only played mobile games." Lucas said, "Actually, I don't have time to play mobile games." He confessed, "Since I was transferred to the president's office, I haven't played games much." He just said it casually last time. Leo said, "That's really a pity for you." Lucas immediately changed his tune. Of course, time should be used to create value for the company. Leo was just about to say, flattering, but he changed his words at the last moment. Then let's start. Lucas sat down on the sofa in the audiovisual room. After checking, he found that Leo had bought almost all the popular games on the market. They were all genuine boxed versions and hadn't been installed yet. Lucas asked Leo, "Mr. Leo, what type of games do you want to play?" Leo hadn't studied them either and said, "It's up to you. I bought them to prevent you from getting bored." Lucas was surprised again. He picked a puzzle game suitable for all ages and put the disc in to install it. They couldn't just sit idle while waiting. To reciprocate, Lucas took the initiative to talk to Leo about the international situation. After listening to him, Leo said expressionlessly, "I seem to have read the same view." Lucas honestly admitted, "I read it online." Leo was just about to educate him to listen to different opinions and not just focus on one view. Suddenly, he remembered Henry's words and held back his educational speech. He improved his wording and began to explain other viewpoints to Lucas. Lucas gave the president timely feedback, saying things like, "I see," and "how amazing." Leo unconsciously talked for a long time. Then he just realized it and stared fixedly at Lucas. Lucas had an expression of, "You're always right," just the same as when having a meeting in the company. If things continued like this, it would be no different from working. Leo stopped in time, turned his head and asked, "Don't you want to play games?" Only then did Lucas remember. He picked up the controller and entered the settings. While doing it, he said, "Mr. Leo, join in." Leo rarely hesitated. Lucas stuffed the other controller into Leo's hand and said, "Games are more fun when everyone plays together." He leaned over to teach Leo. "This is for moving forward, backward, left and right. This is for confirmation." Looking at his suddenly approaching head, Leo said, "I still know this. I also had my school days." Lucas raised his head and smiled sheepishly. "I thought you started a company as soon as you were born." Leo's lip corner curved slightly. When Lucas switched to the game, he still felt incredible. On this sunny afternoon, he was actually sitting on the sofa playing games with his boss. If his past self a year ago knew about it, he would surely think it was a sheer fantasy. Speaking of which, being with the president, he could always have novel experiences from time to time. It's just that Leo's gaming were really unflattering. Lucas said to the president, "Just follow me." Leo vowed confidently that a great president like him could surely handle a small game. But in the end, either he disappeared while walking or fell into a pit. "Stay calm." The two continued moving forward. Lucas said, "I'll go first. You wait behind." After a while, Lucas cleared the obstacles ahead and asked, "Where are you?" Leo said, "I went to take a look around and got by the monsters. We should treat game novices with the warmth of spring." Of course, Lucas couldn't blame Leo. He could only silently restart this level. Think about how rare this experience is. Usually it's Leo who gives him advice at work. Now, he can actually be better than the president in playing games. It's something to be proud of. It's just that guiding a novice really consumes patience and endurance. Lucas gradually felt exhausted. When he found again that the little figure behind him had inexplicably disappeared, he finally couldn't help but say, "Why are you so stupid?" After saying that, he was stunned. "You're dead. You actually called the president stupid." This was the second time Lucas felt that he was going to be doomed since he was caught scolding the president behind his back last year. He mechanically turned his head and looked at Leo with a look of utter despair, saying, "I'm sorry, Mr. Leo, I forgot to zip my mouth." The scene of the president getting furious that Lucas had imagined didn't happen. Leo was calmer than expected and directly admitted, "My gaming really need improvement." Lucas looked at Leo in horror. Was the president taking the wrong medicine? Leo glanced at Lucas and said, "Keep going. You're about to die too." Lucas quickly dealt with the monsters in front of him and said, "Mr. Leo, please don't take what I just said to heart." Was the president laying a smoke screen and going to deal with him later? Lucas wished he could hug the president's thigh and shout loudly, Your subject deserves to die. Please forgive me, Your Majesty. Leo said, It's okay if you want me to not take it to heart, but you have to do that. Lucas blinked in confusion. What? Leo's eyes flickered. That one. He cleared his throat and said, Act coquettishly and I'll forgive you. Lucas was stunned and didn't understand what Leo meant. Act coquettishly? Was it the act of coquettishness he was thinking of? Your humble servant. No, your humble official can't do it. Leo nodded and said seriously, Didn't you say last time that you like to act coquettishly? Show me one. What a strange request. Lucas blushed instantly and said, How can one deliberately act coquettishly? Acting coquettishly, of course, has to come from the bottom of one's heart when the atmosphere is right. Leo turned his head, visibly unhappy, stared intently at Lucas and said, Didn't you say you're a good actor? You can't even do this. Lucas flushed with embarrassment and said, There's no one else here. Who am I acting for? Besides, acting is so boring. Leo thought it made sense. Acting it out was indeed boring. He said, Then there's no other way. I'll bear a grudge against what you just said. What a childish threat. Lucas remembered the torment Leo had inflicted on him a year ago and felt uneasy. Wouldn't the president really abuse his power to oppress him again? Lucas could only pluck up his courage and ask, Mr. Leo, what kind of coquettish act do you want to see? Leo was secretly surprised. He didn't know there were so many different ways to act coquettishly. One really does learn something new every day. There are still so many unknown areas in this world. Leo said, I don't know how to do it. How would I know? Lucas could only try to lower his voice and whisper, Mr. Leo, please forgive me. He deliberately dragged out the ending sound and made a coquettish voice through his nose. Leo glanced sideways and said, Is that all? Lucas. You're so hard to please. He reached out his hand, grabbed the sleeve of Leo's clothes and gently shook it from side to side, looking at Leo longingly like a puppy. Leo showed a look of indescribable discomfort and said, It's a bit perfunctory and a bit cringeworthy. The blush on Lucas's face gradually faded. He said expressionlessly, This is what it's like without real emotions. My ability is limited. I can't do any better. Leo said, If you don't act coquettishly, you can perform as a drama queen. I'm also quite curious about what it means to be overly dramatic. Lucas took a deep breath and said, You'd better not forgive me. Just take revenge on me to your heart's content. Leo, you really disappoint me. You give up so quickly. After saying a few words, Lucas also realized that Leo wasn't really angry. He changed the topic to the game and said, After we finish this level, let's change to another game. Leo didn't force him and just followed his words, saying, Okay, let's change. Lucas gave up this terrifying level clearing game and switched to a first-person shooter FPS game. He said sulkily, Mr. Leo, take a break and watch me play. Leo had no objection, sure. Lucas knew that Leo would go to the shooting range to practice shooting, so he deliberately chose a shooting game and let Leo watch him play. Although he didn't know how to use real guns, his virtual shooting were still very accurate. Lucas switched to the first-person perspective, carried his weapon, and explored around. Gradually, he got a bit absorbed. But annoyingly, Leo often gave instructions beside him. Go this way. That way must be a dead end. There's still someone on the right. Didn't you see? If you had cleared them all just now, would it be like this now? Leo completely forgot his persona of being a game novice and kept nagging in Lucas' ear. It was really annoying. There are two types of people that are most annoying when playing games. One type is the novice who knows nothing and only holds others back. The second type is the so-called king of talking who gives instructions on how to play. Today, the president had both of these annoying qualities. Lucas endured and finally couldn't bear it anymore. He put down the controller and said to Leo, If you're so good, you play. Leo picked up the controller and said, Fine, I'll play. Leo completely got rid of his previous style of causing trouble everywhere. He controlled the character to move quickly and efficiently cleared the map one after another and seemed like a completely different person. Lucas stared at the TV screen. Suddenly, he reacted and looked at Leo in disbelief. Mr. Leo, you lied to me just now. Clearly he's so at operating, but he just pretended to be a newbie. Leo remained calm and said quietly, I never said I couldn't play games. Leo said faintly, I learned from someone. That someone never said they couldn't dance before. Lucas was speechless. In the end, it turned out that Lucas was watching Leo show off his marksmanship. He shouted, It's so boring. Leo turned to look at him, then stuffed the controller into his hand and said, You play by yourself for a while. I'll go prepare dinner. Lucas was stunned. Only then did he remember that the main purpose of his visit was to have dinner. He asked, when will the chef come? Leo looked at him and said, the chef has already come. Lucas was puzzled. He didn't see anyone come. Did the chef just go into the house by themselves? Leo stood up from the sofa, reached out and ruffled his fluffy head, and said, I'll call you later. Lucas watched the president leave in a daze. He played with the controller for a while. As he played, he finally understood and immediately jumped up from the sofa. He rushed out of the audio-visual room and ran to the kitchen. Sure enough, he saw Leo busy inside. Leo rolled up his sleeves. While using tongs to turn over the fried meat in the frying pan, he noticed Lucas coming. He turned sideways and calmly said to him, it'll be ready soon. Wait a little longer. Lucas stood there stupidly at the kitchen door. The president, just how many more surprises is he hiding? Leo stood in the kitchen, surrounded by kitchen utensils and knives. The scene was a bit discordant yet somewhat eye-catching. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing his strong forearms. He picked up the golden, brown meat patty from the pan with tongs, then quickly cut the patty into pieces with a Western-style carving knife, just as neatly as when he played the shooting game. Leo was imbued with the smell of cooking and suddenly came to life. Lucas looked at the scene and was inexplicably touched. He said, Mr. Leo, I didn't expect you could cook. Leo snorted, what can't I do? Lucas thought that falling in love was something Leo wouldn't know. He took a step forward and said, Mr. Leo, let me help you. Leo stopped him and said, can you do it? Lucas whispered, no. Then just stay here and don't get in the way. After saying this, Leo realized that he had involuntarily spoken to Lucas in a fierce tone again. He pursed his lips and softened his voice. It's okay. You can go and sit in the dining room first. The ingredients have already been prepared. I just need to cook them in the pot. It'll be ready soon. Lucas could only take one more reluctant look, memorized the warm scene of Leo bustling in the kitchen in his heart, and then left the kitchen. Lucas sat at the dining room table, thinking that the president today was a bit different from usual. He was more gentle and more dedicated. If described in detail, he could even be called tender. It was very comfortable to get along with him, making one feel warm all over. Just as Leo said, dinner was quickly ready. Lucas couldn't cook, but he could at least carry the dishes. He helped Leo carry the plates over, drooling as he walked. It looked so delicious. The president had such a talent. It was really amazing. The two of them sat down at the table. This time, Leo even prepared sparkling wine. But before pouring the wine, he asked Lucas, can you actually drink? Lucas said, of course I can. I have a good drinking capacity. I've also been to many banquets. I'm not someone who has never drunk before. Leo said disdainfully, I still remember the time you got drunk in the company. Lucas defended himself, you have a stereotyped impression of me. Leo poured him a glass of wine. Dense bubbles floated up from the golden liquid, colliding with the air at the surface and spreading the aroma outside. Lucas picked up his glass and clinked it with Leo's. Only then was he satisfied. He asked with a big smile, can we start eating? Leo twitched the corner of his lips and said, eat. While eating the dishes, Lucas shed touched tears. It was so delicious. He said to Leo, Mr. Leo, your cooking are so good. I truly admire you. Leo said, I don't like staying with others. I've been living alone for a long time, so it's not surprising that I can cook. When living alone, one has to learn all kinds of But Lucas thought to himself that Leo should clearly be a young master. People from the same family background as him are all served by housekeepers, but he lives alone outside and can do everything. Lucas felt sorry for the capitalist living alone in a 4-story apartment for 3 seconds and picked up a chopstick of vegetables for Leo, saying, Mr. Leo, eat more. Leo deliberately said, I don't cook by myself every meal. You said the food was delicious last time. To satisfy you, I started processing the ingredients early this morning. Lucas looked at Leo with starry eyes and said, to live up to your painstaking efforts, I can only eat up all the dishes on this table. Leo said, okay then. You're not allowed to leave until you finish eating. Lucas started to feel embarrassed again and said, there's too much. Leo said, do you want me to pack some for you? Lucas continued to look at him with starry eyes and said, really? Fake. Eat more. The two of them chatted and ate, and it was really harmonious. After the meal, Leo still refused Lucas's request to do the dishes. Lucas sat for a while, ate some fruit that Leo had cut, and then it was time for him to leave. Lucas was actually a bit reluctant to leave. He said sincerely, Mr. Leo, I'm really happy today. Thank you. Leo saw Lucas to the door and said, I'm glad you're happy. At least he didn't seem to be so afraid of him today. Lucas stared at Leo. Maybe because he had drunk some wine, his cheeks were rosy and there was a faint glint in his eyes. Leo looked back into his eyes, and for the first time, he also felt a sense of reluctance. Leo was secretly surprised. For the first time, he didn't mind someone else's intrusion. In fact, he even wanted to keep him. Lucas suddenly took a few steps forward, grabbed Leo's hand, held it tightly, and placed it on his own chest. Leo was stunned and didn't know what he was going to do. Lucas held Leo's hand, his cheeks flushed and his eyes glistening. He gently shook Leo's hand and said with a smile, "Mr. Leo, I'm really so happy." The back of his hand gently touched his chest and he could faintly feel his heartbeat. Lucas curled up his lips and said in a soft voice, "Can I eat the dishes you cook next time?" Leo thought to himself that no one could refuse a request made with such an appearance. He softened his expression and said, "Of course you can." Lucas squinted his eyes and smiled. It seemed as if stars had fallen into his eyes. "Mr. Leo, you're really so nice." After saying that, he pinched Leo's palm with his fingers. It wasn't enough, so finally he dug at it with his fingertips, bringing a tingle. Leo looked at him in surprise. Lucas smiled sheepishly, then quickly put Leo's hand down and turned to run. "This is all I can do." After all, he was still a coward. He didn't dare to do anything out of line to the president. It was so embarrassing. He shouldn't have boasted that he could act coquettishly in the first place. Now that the words had been spoken, but he couldn't do it. It was so stiff and shameful. Lucas's voice echoed in the yard, but his figure had already disappeared. Leo looked at his back and couldn't help but let out a laugh. After laughing, he was startled and raised his hand to touch the corner of his mouth. Only then did he realize that he hadn't been so carefree for a long time. The delicate touch remained in the palm of his hand like a kitten's tail gently brushing by. It seemed to satisfy his craving, but also seemed not enough. Leo put down his fingers, stood in front of his own house, and stared blankly at the deep night. Lucas went to work with a nervous heart. He found that Leo looked normal and didn't mention the matter of visiting his house at all. Back at the company, the two of them became ordinary superiors and subordinates again. Lucas breathed a sigh of relief. It has to be said that the president is still reliable in terms of work. Only everyone said that the president had changed a bit recently. He seemed to have become a bit gentler, using fewer questions and not speaking in such a sarcastic way. Everyone thought this was as rare as a red rain falling from the sky. At this time, Henry jumped out and insisted that all the president's changes were his credit. "I taught him." I advised him earnestly, and he finally realized that he had been too strict with us subordinates. Everyone perfunctorily replied, "You're right. Henry is so unreliable in private. How could the president possibly listen to him?" No one believed it. Anyway, this is a good direction of development, and the people in the company have become more energetic in their work. It's just that blxin would cause trouble from time to time. Since Yaoi can only assemble after blxin has produced the charging module, there is too much room for manipulation in between, and Carter would often use this matter to make demands. Several times, Yaoi had to send people to urgently contact and negotiate with blxin, and sometimes Leo even had to appear in person. But every time this happened, Leo would not let Lucas go with him. Generally, when going out on such errands, as long as Lucas was free, he would go with the president, and Leo was also willing to let his secretary go out with him for experience. But during so many negotiations and communications with blxin, Lucas had never gone on a field assignment. Gradually, Lucas found that not only himself, but Leo had never taken the female assistants from the president's office either. Every time the people who went with the president to contact blxin were all strong and tall male colleagues. Not only Lucas, but others also noticed this phenomenon. One day, Lucas went to the cafeteria for lunch. He saw Nora sitting alone at a table. After thinking for a few seconds, he carried his tray and walked over. When Nora saw him coming, she frowned and showed a look of disgust. "Lucas, there's no need to be so obvious, right?" Lucas pretended not to notice and asked, "There's no one here, is there?" Without waiting for Nora's consent, he sat down on his own. Nora pouted. Lucas knew that sometimes when you dislike someone, you can't help it. But since they worked in the same office, seeing each other every day and always working together, they should at least get along okay on the surface. Otherwise, everyone would be waiting to watch them fall out and laugh at them behind their backs. Lucas sat diagonally across from Nora and ate his lunch in silence without saying a word. Being able to sit at the same table and eat together should be the passing line for social interaction, right? Unexpectedly, Nora took the initiative to talk to Lucas. "You didn't go out with Mr. Leo today either." Lucas was a bit surprised and said, "Mr. Leo is meeting with Mr. Carter. He didn't ask me to go." He sighed. "Actually, I quite wanted to go. It's been a long time since I saw Mr. Leo shut Mr. Carter up." Nora scoffed, "Don't you have any idea why he didn't let you go?" Lucas was speechless. Of course he understood. It was all because Carter would harass young and good-looking subordinates. Leo was protecting them. It's just that the others were all female assistants. Only Lucas, a male, had this kind of treatment which made one feel complicated. Lucas said helplessly, "Mr. Leo is very protective of his subordinates." Leo was typically protective of his own people. He only allowed himself to criticize his subordinates and wouldn't let others bully them. Nora snorted, "I know. The fact that he transferred me and shows that he's very magnanimous." Lucas thought to himself that she just hadn't seen his petty side. He could hold a grudge for 10 years. Although they were very close, they could still chat a bit. Lucas was really curious and couldn't help asking, "Why on earth do you dislike me so much?" Nora glanced at him and always chose to tell the truth. "When I was in the administrative department, I thought you got transferred to the president's office through connections." Actually, he doesn't know why he was transferred to the president's office either.